see both of those things, the beast of the sea being the Pope and the beast of the earth being government, of course. So those things are beginning to merge. And I have merged, I should say. And now we are on the upswing, and I use that very loosely, upswing, in that the scriptures that have been left for us and to us to understand are being not only fulfilled, but they are being purified in the hearts and minds of humanity. Any question? Stay healthy, Janine. So, if there are no questions or comments, I'm done.
I don't know if I have the right of it, but I was interested in the fact that the spire fell, but the windows remained. And from what we've discussed and what I've read, the spire is a phallic symbol.
Mhm.
And the way the windows are shaped imitates the vulva.
Mhm.
So it's a more feminine symbol.
Mhm.
So I just, you know, I feel like there's something there.
It is. The facade is there. The facade of the structure is there. Those towers, as long as those towers there, the facade remains. It's showing that, what is the facade? It's a facsimile of something that doesn't exist.
I mean, that their architecture, the masculine and feminine symbology in that architecture is purposeful.
Oh yes, absolutely it is, because the spire is dominant,
Mm-hmm.
and the vulva is beneath it. So absolutely it is.
And what is beneath it?
The vulva.
The vulva?
Yes.
Well, I asked that because when I look what Notre Dame means, it's Our Lady. And it's just kind of like put two and two.
Our Lady dominated by a male.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So was it the releasing, the thought that crossed my mind, was it the releasing of the Catholic Church domination of women, the releasing of feminine energy?
Now, the feminine energy has already been released, that's why they burn. That's the reason for it. What I'm saying is this. When Christianity talks about the female, it projects that the female is respected, that the female is important. But through the action, it's just the opposite. Because when you look at what we call quote-unquote theology, there are no females involved in theology. The theology of Christianity is not predominantly but totally male. So it is homosexual in nature. Because it is both the seed and the womb.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So if it was truly representative of feminine and masculine according to the scriptures, there would not be a need for a phallic symbol to be on top of anything. It's just a structure that keeps you out of the weather so that you can explore spiritual things. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
And it's no coincidence that structures after 2000, if you look at quote unquote church structures after 2000, very few of them has steeples. They don't have steeples. Very few, if any, have steeples. So that in itself is speaking to the impotence of that maleness in religion. It can't produce because it doesn't have the seed anymore. It's done. The phallic symbol is there, but there's nothing coming from see that. And I don't want to be more explicit than that, of course, but you understand where I'm coming from. So I don't, want to, it's like, so. Any questions or comments, statements?
Yeah, I believe the rose is a symbol that was often used to.
Janice, would you turn down just? Go ahead, Nick.
I believe the rose is a symbol that was often used by people to conceal the feminine incarnation of divinity. So in the case of Yeshua and Mary is basically what the rose is meant to be, the hidden sort of symbol of. And I believe that happened in a lot of places all over Europe as a result of the sort of masculine imperialism of the Catholic Church attempting to destroy that part of the story. So the Rosicrucians, if you've ever heard of them, they're kind of like the Freemasons, but the key word being rose in the Rosicrucian, meaning that they were, at least on surface level, a part of the order that recognized the divinity of Mary, that had to go underground as a result of the Catholic Church and other sort of negative masculine forces attempting to destroy that. But as we were just saying, this is so obviously a symbol of the dissolution of that negative masculinity, so that the femininity, which was actually there the whole time, because the windows were called the rose windows, like we just mentioned, that femininity that's been there the whole time has, as the pastor just said, has already been unleashed, has already begun to rise to her place of power and is sort of destroying those things that are attempting to suppress and negatively influence her.
So, it's funny how in the past when we saw these signs of the times, we're able to actually look at them and discuss it and analyze it and see what's going on, and it took quite some time to do it. But it appears as though in the first 10 or 15 minutes of our discussion today, we've got to the meat of it already. We've seen what's actually taking place. I don't know how the fall of these symbols will affect tomorrow, and I don't think I want to know. I think I just wait and see. But I see that there is a huge battle to maintain the status quo, because before the flames were out, there was a pledge of $100 million to rebuild the structure. Before the flames were extinguished. The other thing is this: as right as the wood was in that structure, there is no reason it should not have burned longer. It should have burned much longer. Much quicker than that. Mm-hmm. But there is no reason that 500 firemen should not have been able to extinguish the flames. But it burned for quite some time, like 6 hours or something like that. It was like
without destroying the whole structure.
It just what it actually did. If you can see, as Jenny so aptly described in Windows the Volvo, mm-hmm. If you can see the towers as being the extensions of the legs of the Volvo, and and it's gone. So the womb of the church is gone. The male symbol of the church is gone. The only thing that's there now is a reminder that this was here, now it's destroyed. So what do you do with the rest of it? You know, you can rebuild all you want, and I doubt if it's going to happen anytime soon, if it happens at all. But you can rebuild all you want, but you cannot replace the spiritual significance of what it was. That's what I'm saying. You can't do that. You can replace a house, but it's still not the same one. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
It still is not the same one. And when that building was constructed, it took like, 300 years to build it, to complete the building. But every stone in that building had purpose. And with it being rebuilt, those stones rebuilding it will not have the same purpose. You see, the energy is different now because it is not being reconstructed because there is a desire to manipulate the other realm. It is being reconstructed as a historical symbol as opposed to a religious landmark. See the difference? So it will not carry the same significance. So, and the other part of it is that I don't know whether with this structure or not. Nick might have the answer to this more so than I. During that period, in order for you to work on a cathedral, to be a laborer on a cathedral, or to have anything to do with the workmanship, you had to be a Catholic. You had to be baptized in order for that to happen. Now that is not going to happen. So with those two towers, maybe they can represent, I don't know, I'm speculating now, that one is Pope Francis, Pope Benedict, the rift between the two. I don't know, but there is a rift. There's definitely a rift between the two, with Benedict saying that, Pope Francis rather saying that he does not see Benedict as an adversary. However, when you read the statements of each in reference to the kids, there is no other way to see it other than it being adversarial. The thing that struck me when he said 68, like a little bit self-serving, but when I saw the year 68, I'm like, I graduated from high school in 68. I was not promiscuous. but that's what he said. He referenced that particular year. How many days was Jesus purported to be on the earth? 50, wasn't it? Wasn't it 50 days?
After restoration?
Yeah, after the resurrection. Jubilee? Jubilee is 49, 7 times 7. And the 50 years Jubilee. So, if he says 68, the 51st years, is 19. So, let's see what happens. That's where I am with that. Any questions about anything else before we move beyond this point? Maybe I should have begun by asking, how do you feel, what your views were about what transpired with the fire? Because it actually, I heard about it like 12 o'clock Eastern time, but it was 7 o'clock in France when it started. then the fact that all of these things are happening during Holy Week. And understanding that Holy Week itself is really a facade. There's nothing real there. When you consider that you have Mardi Gras where anything goes, then you have Fat Tuesday where, okay, now all you haven't done, you need to do it because Ash Wednesday is coming, and this is going to begin Lent, 40 days before Easter. So you got to give up something. So whatever you're going to give up, you better deal with it, before Ash Wednesday. And then you give up something, and all your sins are supposed to be forgiven because what your penitence is through fasting. Giving a thing up is fasting. That's where your penitence takes place, and the absolution of your wrongdoings take place during that period. And now that this is taking place, here we are. We're at Good Friday. And on Good Friday, you must prepare for the holiest day of the year, resurrection. And the holiest day of the year is the day that's set aside for the worshiping of the sun. So that destruction, and then people may say that I'm crazy. However, well, maybe I am. I remember before 2000, you would be hard pressed to find a Protestant church who celebrated Lent. The ones who celebrated Lent are the ones who never moved too far away from Catholicism. That's the Episcopal Church and Methodist Church. Because they held on to that, what they call that thing? Come on, you good Methodists.
Apostle Creed.
The Apostles' Creed. Yeah, the good Baptists have to tell you good Methodists. The Apostles' Creed, they held to that. They held on to the Apostles' Creed. And if you held on to that, then you truly have not separated from your mother's womb or from the seed that brought you into existence. And you say, so what is the connection between the rest of them who don't have the Apostles' Creed, i.e., in particular the Baptists, the Christian flag? That's the same symbol that was flown during the Crusades. It's drenched in blood and genocide. So all of these things are coming into play now. And we talked about early on, some years ago, as we started seeing this Polaroid picture develop, we started talking about how things are going to reach a crescendo, and we're going to begin to see things fall apart. Well, I never understood how it would happen, but what I'm seeing is that the underpinnings of the apex of the pyramid are gone. They're gone already. They've been removed. And the apex of the pyramid, or the pinnacle of the pyramid, is represented by the superpower in the world, USA, and the superpower in religion, Catholicism. And the underpinnings of both are gone. So even though the two leaders of these sectors believe that they are still on top, they've actually fallen to the ground and has become the footstool of those who see clearly with the eye and desire that humanity sees the same thing, or at the very least see what we see. Does that make sense? So I just see a lot of prophecy being fulfilled, and And the prophecy, the thing that gets me is that the prophecy is referenced by religion as being the work of the devil, the fulfillment of the prophecies. The reason the fire is because it's the devil's work. The reason this man is in power in this country is because it's the devil. You know, now it's the devil's work, yet it is the religion, the church that's supporting it. You see what I'm talking about now?
So the question is, who is the devil then?
Right, absolutely. So who is the adversary? So this is what I'm talking about. And sometimes it's extremely difficult to see beyond where, not see beyond, but to see what your now is. And what I mean by that is that if you can recognize what your now is, and your now does not look like what's projected by Yeshua, if your now does not look like what's projected by Muhammad, if your now doesn't look like the description of Elohim, then your now has you blinded and has you in bondage. I say me because I know about me, and most of you probably the same way, if not all. When I looked at my now, I saw that my now was empty, even though it presented itself as being of substance. There was no substance to my now, and that was when I was caught up in religion. When I was the consummate pastor, that was my now. When I saw that my now had no sustenance at all, I began to look for something because my soul was hungry. And I didn't realize that's what it was because I honestly had the only idea of my soul that I had was something that was going to heaven later on. You know, that was my understanding of my soul. However, my soul is a thing in me that was starving, but I couldn't realize that until I actually took an inventory of my present. If you are looking in the past and looking in the future, then you can't see the now. And what I mean by that is the past being Jesus died for our sin. And one day he's coming back to get us. But what about now? There is no now when you look at it from that perspective. However, if you look at the now, ask yourself, okay, if Jesus died for all of our sin, so our sins would be forgiven. If he took all of our sins on the cross, then why is there sin? And if he's coming back to get us and he's going to appear in the sky, then how large is he going to be? So that everyone can see him. And if he died for our sins, then why is it that those who have never heard of him going to hell? If he died for the sin of the world.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So those are the questions that I raised that didn't make sense to me. And that's what gave me the opportunity to use the balm in Gideon to apply to my eye so my eye could be open. So I could have my sight restored. And the restoration of my sight was not clear. I saw men as trees for quite some time. And the application was made again, and I began to see things more clear than what I had ever seen them. And when I say I saw men as trees, that was during the period when I thought I had found the answer, and the answer was charismatic ministry. I saw men as trees. I saw what I was seeing and didn't know it. I was seeing how man had taken his intellect and interwoven it with the spiritual essence of the scriptures, or what he called the essence of the scriptures, and made it look different than what I was involved with. However, when there was a reapplication of this salve or this balm, my eye got clearer, and I started to see that it was the same thing, but it was just packaged different. And when I saw that it was the same thing that was packaged different, now the desire to see more increased, and my hunger increased, and I realized something, that I had been given a sweet snack, and that's what the thing that made me feel like I had been nourished and I was full, but I really wasn't. And when I realized that this whole charismatic setting was a different packaging of the same thing, the hunger became even more persistent. And the desire became so strong until it was something I could not deny as much as I wanted to do it. And the projection of what I was seeing became unbearable in terms of my keeping it on the inside. I could not hold it inside. I had to say it someplace, and my saying it, my putting it out there, my questioning everything at that juncture sent me to a place of solitude. I was in the midst of everyone and everything, yet I was in a place of solitude. Because the things that were around me were not real. The people were not real in terms of what they were professing to teach or to believe. None of this was real, even though it appeared to be. So I was in solitude with the Creator in the midst of everything that existed in terms of religious settings. And the realization of this solitude did not take place until I moved to a desire, or was moved to desire, a self-imposed solitude. The solitude prior to the self-imposed solitude was one that was projected towards me by those around me because of the questions that I was raising about what we purport to believe. When I desired to be in solitude so that I could see more clearly, it is at that point that no longer did I need or have need to be in the midst of these religious settings in order for me to feel like I fit in, or that I belonged, or that I was accepted. At that juncture, rejection didn't matter anymore. Even though rejection still hurt, it just didn't matter anymore. Because I understood that to be a price that had to be paid if we were going to be able to move beyond this false sense of being in a religious setting. This false, and I don't mean being in terms of being present, but our being is religious. Moving beyond that and understanding that we had been lied to, but we had been told the truth at the same time. We had been lied to, but according to those who lied to us, they were telling the truth because they didn't know any better. You see?
Mm-hmm.
So we were being lied to. So how do you deal with being lied to but being told the truth at the same time? Well, you have to become the truth itself, and not a truth that is projected to be truth. You have to look at those writings that were left and those that were hidden, and began to see the true nature of them and the essence of them, and understand that Jesus was no more Elohim than we are Elohim, and no less Elohim than we are Elohim, and that all of this stuff about Jesus being 100% God and 100% man is ridiculous. In that if Jesus was 100% God, then how could the expectation be for us to live the life that he lived if we're not 100% God? If Jesus was 100% man, then how come he didn't have sexual desire? So none of that makes sense. That's the truth that was taught by those who thought that was the truth. However, when you find out what the truth really is, you only find them by finding the answers to those questions. And when you find the answers to those questions, that juncture, you begin to realize that the truth is not so much what you say as it is what your essence is. And when you become the essence of truth, then you begin to feel things or to sense things at a depth where most people don't or cannot experience them, or at a depth that people don't even know exists. And at that juncture, you take on the burdens of humanity, and you don't surround yourself with anyone but you begin to draw everyone. And what I mean by drawing everyone is that you draw people who are in search of the same thing that you are in search of. And you draw people who are still in those settings, but you don't draw them until they need something. And you don't get upset because they come to you because they need something. Because they can't come to you unless they're drawn. Jesus knew that people were coming to him because they wanted something from him. And he gave them what they needed. He did not reject them because they were not following him. He gave them what they needed, knowing that they were going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I mean when I say that you draw everyone and you reject no one. As a matter of fact, you begin to see that the enemy is not those who believe something differently. The enemy is to you is the same. It is also an enemy to those who believe what they believe. Because if you see the enemy as being something that seeks to destroy, then you also must see the enemy as something that needs to see what you see. It seeks to destroy you, but it can't destroy you unless it comes to where you are. And when it comes to where you are, you can see its need. And when you speak to its need, it begins to have a surreptitious respect for you. Even though it doesn't say it, it's there. And you can see it because when things go awry, it seeks you. You say it all the time. People come up to me and tell me their life story, or people come to me and tell me what's going on in their lives. That's the drawing that I'm talking about. So right now, we are at a place where the drawing is going to become more intense. There's an increased hunger, and this is why I say that. If that symbol represented the heartbeat of Catholicism, and it did, and I did not say it is the heartbeat, I said it represented the heartbeat. if it represented the manna in the wilderness, now that the manna is gone, there is a hunger. And when people are hungry, they will eat what's presented to them. And once they taste of the manna from enlightenment, then it quenches the hunger, but at the same time, it also quenches the thirst. So now, even if the facade is raised up again, it is too late, because those who were hungry and didn't know it are now being fed by something different, and they won't return to what they once had, because now they realize it was something sweet, it was fast food, it was something that gave a sense of being fulfilling, but it left you hungry. Because every time that you felt like you were full, when you left that setting, the hunger reoccurred. And the next time that you got into that setting, you had to eat again, meaning that you had to go to the altar for the same thing over and over and over. And every time you left, you find until you exited the building, and now you're right back where you were from the beginning. However, when you have the manna from enlightenment, you understand that you are constantly being fed, and when you face circumstances, you realize that these circumstances are your nourishment. This is where you get your strength, based on how you deal with them. You don't put them and say that if it were not for the devil, I wouldn't be going through this, because at that juncture, what you're doing, you're allowing your food to spoil. Because you're trying to save it to the next day. You can't save the manna. You have to ingest it at that moment, because it was spoiled. So if you can see this picture, you'll see that this same thing about the manna spoiling, if you try to save it to the next day, is no different than saying, take no thought for tomorrow. Ingest it right now. Because when you ingest it right now, this is not only your right now, this is also your tomorrow. And so when the sun goes down and the sun comes up again, no matter what you face, you're ready for it. Because prior to the sun going down, you ingested what you needed. And you thought you were doing it for just now, but you was doing it for the just now, all the nows that's gonna come. Because there is no tomorrow. However, if you are taught that wait until tomorrow, your change is gonna come, as opposed to saying, my change has come, it simply needs to manifest. That's a difference. And when you can hold on to that, you sleep easier, your burdens are lighter. You are able to deal with life from a different perspective, and your vision becomes clear, and it, quite frankly, your vision is corrected. And it's like having LASIK, but it's a spiritual LASIK that takes place. So now that you have seen, there is no unseen. Now that you've seen it, no one can take it away from you. Now that you know what it tastes like, feels like, you know what the experience is, no one can tell you differently. So they just headphones on, I guess that's what that is. No one can see it, can take that away from you. Neither will you be blind again, because you've been able, your sight has been given back to you. Now, if your sight has been given back to you, then it is incumbent upon you to restore someone else's sight. And you don't do that by putting them down and looking down on them. You do that by embracing them. You do that by meeting them where they are and walking with them to where they need to be. Someone said something to me this week. I was talking with someone, and well, Kevin was talking to me this week, and he said to me, when we were talking, I said, well, I don't get caught up in religious stuff. And when the pastoral stuff of a religious nature is taking place, I don't talk. I just sit and observe. Why? Because I don't want to inject something that's going to be divisive and going to be burdensome for those around. And he said to me, he laughed actually and said, that's what I respect about you. He said, you have been an influence in my life since I was a little boy. Because I saw how you would be around religion and you would dismiss yourself from the conversation without trying to push what you believe to other people. And he gave me an example of what happened. He said, I remember when my grandmama died, there was these religious people trying to push you in their direction, but you didn't say anything. But when it came time for you to speak, you did what was necessary and sat down, and everyone knew what you were saying. I was a little boy, but I remember that. And I shared that with Rainier, and what I took from what she said, paraphrase of course, and what he had said to me was, without even knowing it, eyes were open. You see? Vision was restored. I didn't know it, they didn't know it. But there was something, there's no way that I can believe that it was totally understood by them, and not even me. But something resonated. Something different was experienced. And I'm not doing this because my recoiling from this is not because I don't want to be tainted by this stuff. That's not it at all. My recoiling is that a good soldier waits until there is opportunity to strike. In such a way it's going to be effective. You see what I'm saying? If you strike too soon, if you do it at the time when you're putting people down or you engage them and they feel obligated to fight you, to argue with you, now no one really wants to hear what you have to say because you're very argumentative. However, if when you speak not at them but to them, based upon what the true nature of things are, at that point you are speaking from your heart to a heart. And when that takes place, it does not matter what's said about you or how you're treated. It's too late, because rather than you argue with one, you have now spoken to the heart of 500. You understand where I'm coming from? And that's that. When that was said to me, of course it was humbling, and he even said that my humility comes through because I don't project what I know and what I understand. And I said to him, if I were to do that, then I would disrespect the one who gives me understanding. And one of the strengths of all of us, especially those who are teachers, is that we do not allow each other to convince ourselves of something that's not real. We challenge each other. We challenge everything, because it is easy to convince yourself of something that's not real. It's easy to make yourself feel good about yourself, even though it is not real. That is something that we don't do. And you cannot avoid doing that unless you have opportunity to question, unless you have enough self-assurance about what you believe to permit others to question you about anything. That's how things when you see people on parity with you, then there is no problem with the questions they raise or the statements they make. And there is, George, I think everyone knows George, not my brother George, but George from Great New Faith. Yeah, you know George. George said, Kathy is teaching, she's leading the, where she's facilitating, and she said last Sunday that she would not be there because she had to have oral surgery. And during the course of the week, I was talking with George, and George said to me, I don't mean no harm. Remember, he said, I don't mean no harm, but I've gotten accustomed to hearing her, and her tonality is something that resonates with me, and quite frankly, I don't want to hear nobody. But and she said that, well, Pastor will pick up from where I left off. He said, I don't want to hear you. I mean, it was so funny. But he was apologetic. I'm like, you don't have to apologize about that, because if you felt like you had to apologize about it, you wouldn't have said it. You know, because speaking, if you look at it from the religious pastoral perspective, he disrespected. But he didn't.
Right.
He spoke what was real. And guess what? He said, I don't want to hear anybody else. So Kathy goes to get her surgery, and they can't do the surgery. So
And then what?
so they can't do this. They didn't do the surgery. So now she's back up Sunday. You see what I'm saying? So that when I told her what George had said, she says to me, George kept me from getting my surgery. But that's what I'm talking about. You have to be comfortable enough, you know, to say those things, and to have the kids to raise the same types of questions, say the same types of things, no, without regard to, you know, how their age. They say what they feel. You've seen it. Fred been talking to me like he an old man since he was able to talk. It's but that's what you have to not project, but that's what you have to do. You know? So anyway, any questions? Rita.
A lot of what you said really resonated with me, and it goes back to something Ms. Barbara taught us a while ago about reacting and responding.
Yes.
Just having to know when and giving it that time. And when that time comes, God will lead you to say those right things to keep it from being confrontational.
Yes.
And I've been having to practice that a whole lot. A whole lot in the home and on the job. And just when I think I got it, it's like, oh, somebody coming again. But I know I just gotta keep going, keep
No,
going
no,
there.
you hear what
Keep
Ricky
remembering
said,
what
right?
she's taught.
Tell me something that you remember from Sunday school.
Sunday school.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. I ask people the next Sunday, what did they preach about today? I don't know. But how long has that been since Barbara talked about reacting, responding as opposed to reacting? Yeah. But you see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
These are the seeds that you nurture, and they don't just become a part of you. They become who you are. That's who you are. So you don't have to start out and say, well, let me see exactly what she said. That's not it. You feel it. I can't present the way she does, and she doesn't present the way I do. But she presents the way it's necessary for you to get it. And if all of it presented the same way, then there would be no point in all of us existing. But it resonated with you. So, anyway, any other questions or statements? Barbara?
I do have a statement. Well, it's more than a statement. It's just a sharing with my family, and you and my family. We talked about last week religiosity, and there was a couple of things that I starred from last week's lesson, but I think what we talked about was we talked about so many other isms and schisms and whatever, that religion was one of those things that we needed to deal with openly. Pastor talked about under the yoke of religion, our burdens get heavier, as opposed to having the yoke of kingdom principles, where you're able to, as above, so below, you're able to see light. And then, Pastor, you talked about religion being the drug of choice for many people. And you talked about our being the avatars for the souls of humanity. And so that was Saturday. Wednesday morning, it was another day until I got word that my first cousin's wife had passed. Apparently she had been dealing with challenging issues related to cancer, but we didn't know about it. I mean, I guess some people did, but they didn't share that. I mean, she didn't want it to be shared. And so it was surprising when she passed. By the end of the day on Wednesday, my baby brother was dead. And that day went on into Thursday. So it's been a long, some of you may just be hearing, but it's been a long, Thursday was very difficult. I'll tell you why I'm saying all this, because I see it in the bigger context of what we've been talking about. My baby brother is Rolanda Adams, and some of you know Ro. Ro always was an encourager to other people. He always built other people up. He was a sharer. That's my baby brother Ro. And we grew up in the same environment of religiosity. But he, more than many, acted on some of the more basic principles of religiosity, meaning he didn't talk about showing love and care and that was it. Because people come up to me and say, he talked to me like he really cared. How many people are religious and ask you how you are, and before you can respond, they've already turned and gone to the next thing. That wasn't wrong. And so, my sister-in-law called me about 11 o'clock when I was getting ready to go to bed. And she said, Barbara, my husband's not coming back home to me. And and she was crying, I couldn't understand, and I couldn't quite put it together what she meant. Forgive me for, I have to share this, you're my family. Ro and Joy had spent the first part of the week together because she was out of work and he wasn't working. And so they've been chilling, and she said they've been enjoying things. Ro had recently had his car in the shop and got it a couple of days before. This was the 17th that he transitioned. And he told Joy, I'm going to go out and test drive the car because I'm not sure everything's as it should be. So he took the car out. And Ro's one of those guys that, when he's out, he calls home and says, okay, he'll tell you something. If only, okay, I'm out, I'm on the way back, he needed things, something like that. Well, for Joy, it was unusual. He did not come back within a reasonable time. He he didn't respond after she called to check on him, because she thought, well, maybe the car put him down, maybe he really did. Whatever the whatevers. And so she decided to go and look for him, because he had shared with her where he thought he was headed, places he was headed to test drive the car. So she says, this is not like him. So she went one way, and then Kevin said, well, I'll go with you. So she and Logan, who's the baby, got in the car, and they went trying to follow where they thought he would go. Kevin went one way, because you know, lots of places you can get to by going different directions. On the way, talking, Joy and Logan talking, they remember Ro had a cell phone, iPhone, and you can do, it's a find locator on that cell phone. And so that's what she did to locate him. And so she called Kevin and said, Kevin, I got a ping, I know where he is, it's in the Rosewood section, down there near Bluff Road and Rosewood, down in that area. And that's where I'm headed. And so Kevin said, okay, I'm on the way. Joy got down there. By the time it was dark, relatively dark, she went to there, and as she drove, it was a section of town she was not used to, had never been to. It was the boat landing down across Bluff Road on down Rosewood. And she said that she and Logan thought they recognized his car. But there were several other vehicles around. There were no lights, and she was uncomfortable going any further. So she called Kevin and said, Kevin, I'm here, but I'm uncomfortable going. Kevin said, go back. If you feel you're not comfortable, go back. In the meantime, Joy flagged down a policeman that she, and told her of her concern. So he went down there to check. Kevin then came, and Kevin went on down there. And when I say down there, it was away from the Bluff Road, Rosewood area, further down. So Kevin and the policeman walk along the banks, because it was a boat landing, there's a river. And then they split up, and Kevin took one little path and he took another path. Kevin stated that the path he went on, he finally came to something, and he recognized his father's wallet, his father's wristwatch, cell phone, and flashlight on the bank. Not discarded willy-nilly. My brother was very regimented, even in his religious views. He was regimented, and I don't mean that negatively. I mean, he whatever he did with a zeal. Rose, the kind of guy who had 2-3 jobs at the same time, not because he had to. Anyway, I'm digressing. And so Kevin got the flashlight. It was dark for him, and went along the banks looking. And Kevin found his father floating, face down, in the water. He got the policeman, told his mom, don't come down here. Do not come down here. Joy understood something was going on when she saw the police, these sirens of the ambulance, the sirens of the fire truck, those things. They would not let her go down there, so she went back home. And she started calling around, you know, what's happened? I haven't given you all my contact information, so that you can contact me. Kevin told me how things were on the bank with his father's belongings, I you know, in my heart I knew that if there was no blunt, if there was no injury, if there were no bruises on his body, that he intentionally walked into that water, or dove into that water, whatever. He intentionally did that. And so we've talked about the issue of suicide in the past, but it's just slammed into my family. And they don't have all the answers to their questions yet. I gotta leave here and go to Joy's house and say to Joy, okay, Joy, what did the coroner finally say? Because they have so many questions. And it brought it to light when I talked to my Raina, my daughter, and then my son. And last night my son said, Mom, you know, when you called me and you told me that, and I said, Uncle Ro, not Uncle Ro, the perfect father, quote unquote, you know. And he didn't say that negatively. He just said, you know, he was always there for his family. Blah, blah. Anyway, so they need answers to questions. If in fact this man of God who had so much faith, and he did, he taught faith. But there was something that was going on in him that caused him to do this. And so they want questions. I mean, they want answers. The best thing I could do with my son is say, son, I know you got questions, but there's some you're never gonna know. Because we didn't live inside his mind. You don't know the emotional kinds of things he dealt with. Even though the outward appearance was always caring, genuine, caring, sharing, and asking you about yourself. He was so, and I said to myself, he's so busy asking about somebody else that he wasn't attending to himself. So I have to leave here, go to Joyce, and say, Joy, what did Karen finally say, so that I can put a name to these feelings and thoughts and anger that they're feeling. And the name is going to be suicide. I believe he took his own life. So I said to my son, the issue is not necessarily going to be you're always knowing what answers. I don't know. You ask me, I don't know. So let me tell you what I do know. And that's when I told him, what I do know is who your uncle is and who he was. I do know, the man of God he was. I do know how much he loved his family. What I do know is that he touched so many lives. What I do know is he loved his children. And what I do know is whatever happened that period of time, I don't know, in despair, whatever it was, I said, son, when you think about all of the things that we do know, and you weigh it against this period of time, this couple of hours that happened, and we don't know, and you say, how could he? I just told him, just start picking up on what people said about what he did and what he meant to them, because that's gonna outweigh this. He had challenges, but we'll never share it that much. Because I even asked myself, what I missed. Joy and I shared some things privately that I have not shared with anybody else. I'm not privy to share that. I just saw my brother and Joy on Saturday at a birthday celebration for my aunt and uncle. And there was being Ro, same. So, like with everything that happens, there are questions. And I do have a lot of religiosity in my family, as we all do. But I feel like I gotta give them an opportunity. And I asked Pastor if he'd be willing to do that, but I haven't asked them yet. To just ask questions. Just ask questions and get some answers. We may not be able to answer everything they ask, but it's important to me because I told my son, you can stay stuck right there with Roe. And I think a lot of them had him on a pedestal. He seemed to have the perfect life. You can stay stuck right there with, why did he do this? How could he do this? Or you can move on to, okay, what did he do while he was here? How did he interact? How did he relate to you? And so that's where I am. I had a nephew, Marcus, who committed suicide as well. My oldest brother's son. They never had the opportunity, we never had the opportunity to really bring closure to that because my brother decided not to have a memorial. I don't want to do this in the environment of the church. They gotta feel like they can be free to ask the questions without feeling the weight of religion and, oh, this is what, this is the church. This is an opportunity for us to break some yokes. And it may not happen, and I may not see the result of it when we talk, but I gotta find a session for them to know when somebody commits suicide, no, son, they don't go to hell. Because that's what my son said when he called about his cousin. That's what my son said when a girl he used to date years before he found she committed suicide. And she said, she's going to hell. I said, wait a minute, where'd you hear that? I didn't teach that to you. So this is an opportunity to for lack of a better word, to stir the pot even more now that they are in the searching mode. How could he? How could my uncle do this? How could he do this with it, knowing his family? How could he do that knowing how we feel about him? So that's where we are. That's where I am. We said that when we say things, we gotta be willing to deal with them even when they come close. This is close. But if it's an opportunity to further put a crack in this religiosity, then even if Roe died, he's a seed in a sense. And we gotta release the light so the seed can germinate. So, thank you, family. That's where I am. My children feel better, but there's so many nieces and nephews, I'm sure, who have questions. That's where I am. You guys may even have questions because some of you, Betsy, you just heard it today.
No,
Okay. All right.
I don't.
I heard Thursday, but I said no. And it didn't hit me like that. I said no, because I never heard anything else. And when I hugged you this morning, and I was hoping everything was fine. And when I hugged you, I didn't feel any type of tension. But when you started to talk,
I'm sure. I have my moments. I I've had the anger and the, but you know, you can't hold on to, and I don't hold on to that. I just said, okay. And then I started hearing from my brother. One of my brothers is a pastor, and one of my other brothers is a deacon, and they're asking me questions. What do you know? Because they grew up in that atmosphere, and so I gotta be able to tell them something, and it can't be hidden behind the facade of religion. And so not hiding it behind that facade has to bring them face to face, but they gotta know that it doesn't stop there.
Right.
He did so much.
Yes.
Right.
Really.
He has a group of guys that he ran track with. My other cousin, who was a colonel, he was part of that group. As a matter of fact, his record still stands in Carolina. I think Roe's record is Long John. His record is something else. But the guys are waiting they're waiting to have a reunion. And Roe was so much a part of that. I need to be able to tell him so he can tell those guys. Because, you know, that's the last thing they would think that Roe would do. Because Roe was always the one who encouraged them.
Yeah.
So,
I don't see it as, I don't see it as, he didn't take his life, he gave it. And the reason I say that is because had he not given it, we would not have this discussion, and people would not be open to understand, to raise those questions. There is no life that leaves this earth in vain. None.
Mm-hmm.
And especially one who held to beliefs from the depth of their heart, from the depth of his soul. So I see it, no coincidence, that this is a period when the church is talking about Jesus having given his life. And I'm not saying that he's Jesus, but I am saying that it brings attention to it.
mm-hmm.
And the attention that is well deserved. I will never entertain anything negative in relationship to what happened, because that's not his life. That's not who he was. You could talk to him. There were 1,000 people around, and he's talking to you, and you feel like you're the only one around. That's
That's what they say.
I mean, that's who he is. So,
You asked
Did-
me about Sunday school. He wasn't my Sunday school teacher, but that's the first person that popped into my head.
yeah.
That's the first person I saw.
Well, and honestly, he was the first person I saw as a teacher in view when I was there. The first one who approached me when I said that you can't tell what a preacher knows by preaching one sermon. He needs to teach class on Wednesday night. Remember that? No? He's the first one to walk up to me and say, "You're right, we can do it." He had all the questions in the world. So it's nothing negative about it at all. Painful, yes. Negative, no. No, not in the least bit.
And I guess that's what I was meaning when I said I see him as a seed.
Yes, absolutely a seed. Absolutely a seed.
I never mention it to my children because, you know, people say things.
Let me tell you something, Bessie, if this will help you any. When I got the call Wednesday night, I was getting ready to leave, and Imani said to Stephen, "You can't let him go by himself." I came all the way to Columbia believing that I was dreaming. I mean, literally, I seriously was believing
Yeah.
that I was in a dream. And even when I got there, I parked and I went to the wrong house. It's like I didn't want to go. I didn't want to know. I called Barbara. She said the door's open. I said, no, it's not. I was not at the wrong house because I didn't know which house. I just didn't know it at that moment. I've been there enough times to know. I went. She will tell you. No one came to the door, and finally clicked. This is not the house. I was like 2 doors down. But I was parked at the house on, right. And even walking in, it was like, I still didn't believe it. So when you say that, I understand, I feel it. And it has taken not hours, but days to get to where I am, where I can begin to embrace that his body is no longer with us. But there's no doubt in my mind that at the moment of transitioning, everything became clear to him. And I believe with everything in me, that everyone who is close to you, when they see what's real from the other side, they become a message to you. They are able to help, to guide you in this world. I believe that. It is not that Ro was so religious until he didn't see anything. Because if that were the case, he would not have confided in us. And I asked myself the same thing on my way home. Why didn't he call? Because there were times with the surgery he called me. We talked about it. He was uneasy about it. And we talked through it. The issue, we talked. There were things that we talked about. So I know that he trusted what we believed. And he says to me, if everything happened for a reason, he didn't call because he wasn't supposed to. I didn't want to hear that, of course. But I have to embrace that. And if he didn't call because he wasn't supposed to, there had to be a greater reason for this to take place. A greater purpose than what we are able to see at the moment. And I don't know when we'll see it, but I promise you we'll see it. I trust that. Religion is something that we dealt with quite frequently. And that's one of the reasons I say constantly, don't look down on people who are still where you came from. Because the common thread between all of us, with the exception of probably Janice and Nick, that age group, Sheldon, the common thread with all of us was religion. I mean, every one of us, the common thread was when you wake up on Sunday morning, you know where you go. I mean, there was no question about that. Ice on the ground, you know what's going to happen Sunday morning. You're going to read some scriptures, you're going to deal with it. That's the common thread. And I say that to say this. If that's the common thread, and we are where we are in our understanding, we are still attached to that tapestry by that thread of commonality between us. And we are obligated to reach out, to be available, to embrace, and never be critical or negative about any of it. Because those who dedicate themselves to this pathway become the true servants to everyone and encouragers to everyone. So, through the pain, through the tears, we see the light of that seed. And I don't think it's coincidental that it was water. I don't. And this is what gives me solace. Whatever took him to that point, once he exited that body, he saw the greater reason for him getting to that point. You understand what I'm trying to say? And it was not the same thing that took him to that point. It was something much greater. And I honestly, I can't go any further. You know, in church when we used to say, the family chain has been broken,
I'm sorry.
the family chain has been broken, a link of it has been taken away. I don't think that's the truth. The chain has been strengthened. It's been made stronger.
What I said to my children was, that you gotta look at the legacy that it left. And you can't, I mean, Kevin can't walk in his shadow. Kevin has to create his own legacy.
Yes.
We have to create our own legacy. But because Ro touched us, just like someone else who touches us, if there's something that, you saw that you want to emulate to some extent in your life, take that and move on and do your thing. So don't stay there. Don't stay there. Don't let all this stuff come in your mind. Just move on.
Any questions? Comment statements?
This is Rania. Something that I remembered from when my Aunt Gladys died. You know, I remember talking to Mom and Uncle Orlando and a few others. And we talked about death because, some people say, oh, it was merciful. I don't know. There's a sense of, I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say about it, but the comment I remember coming out of it was death was the enemy. And when we were there, and what I feel now is that that's not true. That was part of kind of a religiousness as well. We want to attribute good and bad and judgment to all these things, but in essence, they're all paths. They're all states of existence. Death to us is an existence in a state we don't understand, but still a state, a path, a transition. And I think for me, that's what's come out of this too, is it's really shook and helped me to recalibrate my sense of what a path or a purpose is, and what comes out of things. And I mean, I understand them, but that doesn't make them good or bad. So there's light in everything if I choose to see that. So I don't have that death is the enemy statement running through my head this time. It's the path. I can only hope Uncle Orlando had peace with that path too. So that's it. I just had to share that.
Rainey, yeah, I agree. One of the things that immediately came up within me while I was contemplating this is that it's a reminder that our time here is with a purpose, and we are here on a mission. And especially with respect to my own experience, I think it relates to helping facilitate the enlightenment of a lot of people, as are we all part of that process. But it just reminds me of the fact that I need to move and think with purpose and with an awareness of that mission. And I think, well, the more details we get about what happened with Uncle Orlando, it will become clearer, I think, what I need to do with regards to helping people move from here. But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about why he did that, if that's in fact what he did. And I have a lot of thoughts as to what Kevin and Ryan and Logan will have to deal with now. But very shortly, I believe that a lot of what Kevin and Ryan and Logan are doing with this life is in many ways dealing with and learning how to solve the problem that Orlando possibly didn't know how to solve, because his religious context was that much more restrictive. So he did the best he could within that context. But Kevin and Ryan and Logan are meant to break out of that context. And if you don't know how to break out of that context, then it creates a hurricane. And in some ways, I understand what that is, but I believe I'm particularly placed in order to not only break out of that context, wherever it may be, but also help others do the same. So I haven't talked to Kevin yet, but I was going to call him today, and I probably will after we finish. But all of those barriers and internal limitations that get placed on you by the sort of box that religious thinking sort of puts us in, they have to break. And if we can't find a way to realize that we already are outside of them, then it creates a immovable force meets unstoppable, or immovable object meets unstoppable force situation inside of us. And I believe that may have been what Orlando was experiencing. And that kind of internal, something has to give. You can't live with that. You cannot. But I believe that's what my generation is responsible for helping to do, which is remove all of those barriers to our own healing and enlightenment, which is what we all face.
And perhaps what you were talking about, Barbara, is the pathway to that. The question, answering the questions, raising whatever questions that are raising, having answers for them. It's the pathway to what Nick is talking about. removing those walls that restrict. Okay. Are there any Tuesday? 11 o'clock. Janice, you have it. It's on your phone.
I'll send it to you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Um, I'm done. I'm done. I think it's fitting, not ironic at all, but fitting, that all of this is in the same context of the cathedral, the rift between the popes, ecumenical meetings, all these things are the same pathway. And I knew that and know that the burden of humanity is on our shoulders, but I never thought it would be this heavy. But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Okay. I'm done.
Brother James?
Yes.
Yeah. To my sister Barbara, and to all of you who were there, Barbara, you mentioned the word family. And I know what that resonates in your spirit, but we just want to thank you for bringing forth healing now, to be able to appreciate the importance of family and being able to be who you are, that we all can receive, to know that it's much bigger than what we may see visually. But I truly thank you for bringing forth this healing to all of us, that we can appreciate the importance of not only who we are, but the responsibility that we have to make sure that this is brought forth in that way that draws us all closer to truly understand what we say when we say family. And I know that there was a period of time, Pastor Richard, that we did not have the audio with regards to the podcast. And so again, I thank Sister Janice, and I thank all who had a part, because truly we needed to hear what we heard today. Now, with the Notre Dame situation, James and everyone there, I've experienced the edifice of a building being torn down, but you don't and cannot kill the spirit. And I just want, to again thank all of you for your presence, because today, we can truly appreciate the healing taken forth in the macro, that this is something that we all may have to endure, we may have to experience, in terms of knowing that death has no sting. However, to be able to talk about or be able to share what has been shared today, I just thank the family. So I just wanted to, again, just offer, our empathy, to the family, but more importantly, appreciating the family in terms of, Barbara, what you've shared. So again, my unconditional love to you and the family. Please accept And thank you again, just for being who you are, my sister.
Thank
That's
you.
all I wanted to say, James.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, that's it, we're done. Thank you.
Stays out.
Nick, are you coming home?
Thank you, because I was gonna break it trying to put it back in.